Eli Lederman, ESPN with us on 365 Sports with Craig and Paul. David Smoke, thank you for your time today. We appreciate that. Eli, thanks for your time. What are your thoughts? There's some great games this weekend. There's Notre Dame and A&M. There's the Clemson-Georgia game, and then obviously a couple of others that come to mind, Penn State, West Virginia. Let's start with that one. What would a win against West Virginia against Penn State mean to Neil Brown, and also be a nice little notch in the belt, so to speak, for the Big 12?
Be a heck of a notch in the belt for the Big 12. Would be huge for West Virginia. You're talking this time last year, if you remember, Neil Brown shows up to Big 12 media days and basically says everybody has it wrong on West Virginia. You know, we all thought he was maybe on the hot seat, and he was right. And as they go into this year, I think maybe we've talked about this before. I think the Big 12 is wide open. And so if they were to come in week one and take down Penn State, a team I think a lot of folks have pretty comfortably in their playoff pictures, that'd be huge. And you'd be then, I think, putting West Virginia into that conversation at the top of the conference where we're probably right now talking about Utah, K-State, Oklahoma State, whoever you want. It would be massive.
Eli, is this a bigger game for West Virginia than it is for Penn State, or is it a bigger game, or is it the same?
I think if you're Penn State, as I just said, like if they're going to be what they're supposed to be, and finally, you know, they can go the 10-2 that Penn State seemingly always goes right under James Franklin, and that'll mean the playoff rather than just falling short of Michigan or Ohio State. That piece of it probably makes it bigger because that would be a big dent. We know the 12-team means you can lose a game early. And it doesn't knock you out, but I think that would be a major stumbling block on the whole in terms of what Penn State hopes to do. Whereas West Virginia, all things told, no one's expecting them necessarily to go in and win that game, and their season won't be, inexorably altered by that loss if that's how it goes down Saturday.
Eli, are you a believer in Garrett Green and the Mountaineers in terms of a Big 12 contender? It seems like sometimes they can get lost in the shuffle just because there's a handful of teams that typically rattle off people's brains, Utah, K-State, even Arizona, Oklahoma State, before they get to West Virginia. Do you feel there's a level of disrespect, or is it just such a crowded field nowadays in the Big 12?
Probably a mix of both, but I think maybe that's, one of their weapons. Again, last year, we all were writing off Neil Brown and the Mountaineers this time of year, and they went out and had a heck of a season. And I think, Garrett Green, I've seen it both covering Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. He's dangerous. And they're a team that, maybe lurking in the weeds is the spot for them right now. But I have to imagine there's going to be a team or two that we consider right now to be at the top of the conference who's going to fall short, whether that's on performance or injuries or anything like that. And there's going to have to be a team or two that surprise us, and West Virginia might be that group.
So did the opening weekend of the season just give us a glimpse of, there's always crazy, there's always stunning upsets. I don't know if Georgia Tech was a stunning upset, but obviously with the Florida State number 10 in the country, did that weekend just tell us this is going to be bat crazy because of what's going on and also the college football playoff expanding to 12?
Well, I think, we're in for probably what's going to be the most exciting and wild college football season any of us have ever watched, which I think is awesome. And this is a really good appetizer for it. Does it mean we're going to see upsets galore? I don't know. I think that the best teams in the country are probably still going to perform, but we just saw, we spent a lot of time in the offseason wondering what Florida State would look like, both as a team that lost a lot and had to add a lot through the portal, but also a program that, whether it was within the walls of the program or on the outside of the fan base, however much it matters, that was still very much hung up on what happened last year and how it ended for them, just a sour taste, and obviously not the start they would have wanted. And I think for me, the piece that was most interesting is we heard so much about the line play for Florida State and how they were going to have, maybe the best defensive line in the country and an offensive line that could go up against anybody, and they got pushed around. And so that, to me, was the most interesting aspect there.
Yeah. I believe me, I heard a lot of it, Eli. But I'm wondering for you, which game do you think will be closer, Clemson and Georgia or Notre Dame and A&M?
Oof, that's a tough question. I think I've got more faith in Clemson this year than I do A&M. They're very different spots, obviously. So I'll take Clemson, and and that maybe is betting some on the fact that Georgia may not be hitting, 10th gear on the opening weekend of the season. But I'm really intrigued by that game in College Station. I think Notre Dame is probably one of the most interesting up and down programs to look at this year. The high end of this for them could be really high, but as we know with Notre Dame, that when things don't go right and everything around Marcus Freeman, that there will be a lot of buzz there. And at the same time, Texas A&M, I mean, they're undergoing quite an overhaul with Mike Elko. I think sooner or later it's going to be, in a really good spot. But how far along they are on the football field this fall, we're going to start to see what that looks like in week 1.
Eli, off the field, you'd hope they kind of would just quiet down in general, but there's still plenty of things going on, whether it's realignment rumors or whether it's, tweaking rules. And one of the things that we've heard about and it's been discussed for quite a few months is changes to the transfer portal once again, and looking like we're maybe zeroing in on having one portal that would occur towards the end of the season. What are your thoughts on that kind of a shakeup when it comes to the transfer portal, and whether, it's a good idea, or is it just making it more difficult for the bigger picture?
Well, I think it probably simplifies things in a lot of ways, and coaches will probably in one sense feel like, all right, we know that we can focus on one portal period, whether that's outgoings or incomings, and it'll certainly make that December period, which of course only falls at the same time that you're signing a high school class and potentially competing in the postseason. So it's busy enough. That'll get really packed in. But here's the thing. What does every coach at the end of spring camp tend to do, or program? They tend to offload guys who are not cutting it or are not going to be where they want to be on the depth chart. And that's when you go, in the summer, spring and summer, and you shop for all of your needs. Here in Oklahoma, OU went and got Dominic Williams from TCU. In the summer, you can look around the country. That's when a lot of the real targeted portal work of the spots where you go into the summer needing a guy. That's where a lot of that work gets done. And if you take that away, maybe it just gets done in December instead. But I do think that for all the manpower and probably extra stress that comes with it, it's been a valuable time for programs to add further, even in probably a smaller market compared to December. And so if that goes away, you do lose that element of it.
You did a story about Notre Dame's head coach Marcus Freeman a couple of weeks ago. Paul brought up the game with Notre Dame and the Aggies in College Station on Saturday. He didn't just take over a team and there's the normal transition. It's like he went in and started to do a complete renovation of how they were running their business. And it appears, Eli, that more aggressive when it comes to recruiting than even Brian Kelly or and maybe anyone else. How did he do that?
Well, it's as I appreciate you referencing, as Al Golden mentioned in the story, maybe the perfect guy at the right place at the right time is Marcus Freeman, because look, Notre Dame is not some small program. I mean, there's only a handful of programs, in the country you'd rather be at than that with the prestige and everything they have. But there's limitations around Notre Dame in terms of academic standards, in terms of, lower C conservative, in terms of their approach to NIL and things like that in the past. But I think Marcus Freeman has been able to take what is a really attractive product in Notre Dame, and he's modernized it. And whether that's in pushing their NIL arm and how they're doing that, or pushing in recruiting to taking them to places they haven't gone before. We know Notre Dame is always going to recruit the high-level private Catholic school kids across the country, but he's gone into Texas, he's gone to New Jersey, he's gone to places they haven't always gone, and found kids, as he puts it, who maybe don't realize that they fit the Notre Dame mold. And I think over time that's going to work. And I hope, for his sake, that there's patience there in South Bend. We know that runs thin fast. And I do think, this year is pretty pivotal for them to make the playoff. But I think over time, he's going to have those incremental pushes to make them better in terms of the talent they've got. And if you consider the fact that Notre Dame's path now to the playoff, like most programs, but especially theirs, is so much smoother in a 12-team format, I think that could be kind of the combination that brings Notre Dame football back a bit.
Eli, what were your thoughts of the story earlier this week that popped out with UConn, at least at the discussion? First of all, we didn't like the timing of it. We're not so sure it's a good idea. Your thoughts about UConn, the Big 12, football later, basketball now, obviously with what Hurley has and Gino. Just the fact that story came out this week when we've had this entire summer.
Yeah, as far as the timing, maybe it was just about when that meeting was. Like, as we know, it was quote unquote an informational meeting, but that also tells you that it's far enough along that, you've got, essentially the group of people trying to make this move happen, presenting it to Big 12 presidents and ADs. As far as I'm concerned, I see why the Big 12 would want it for basketball. But if you're a UConn fan, what's the bread and butter there? It is those basketball programs, and they don't need the Big 12 to win back-to-back titles. They don't need it to power the best women's basketball program of the 21st century. So I don't really know what's there for UConn other than obviously more money, more exposure, but playing a league and having those road games. And, Storrs, Connecticut to Stillwater is not a pretty frequent trip. I don't think many take, and same to Waco and so on. So I struggle to see it from a practical standpoint. But as we all know, it's not about practical, or it's all about football, and it's all about the money. And it's for that reason that it's being presented. And it's why I think it's certainly a possibility, even if for all of us who might kind of look at it and say, doesn't quite make sense.
Eli, you're doing well, man. It's great you're at ESPN. Thank you for being a part of the show when you're available. Appreciate the knowledge. Thank you.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Eli Lederman, ESPN, with us on many things college football, as we bring you as many different eyeballs and opinions and columnists and analysts and stuff each week, not just this week or last week or 3 months ago, but each week